Man, I like turn-based games, but this isn't really the most engaging. A new JRPG in the market, huh? Looks like it's time for an upgrade. If you had told me a few weeks ago that one of the greatest innovations in Japanese RPGs would come from a French developer, I would have said, but if there's one thing the French are known for, it's cooking with disparate ingredients and still producing fire. Okay, there's one more thing they're known for, but Sandfall Interactive overcame the quitting and mastered the cooking. Combining the best features of JRPGs and Souls games, Clair Obscur provides an experience that is not only amazing, but consistently amazing. Lots of content, but no filler. That's what you like to see. But let's dive deeper and inch by inch see what the game is all about. The foundation of cooking is technique, cutting efficiently, adjusting temperature, mastering the tools you have, etc. These are the things you'll always be doing in the kitchen. And in a video game, the foundation is, get this, gameplay. You might be thinking, yes, grand observation, stop! The point seems mundane, but in plenty of JRPGs, the gameplay is not always a strong suit. In this genre, players are looking mainly for a good story, and the gameplay can often get away with being serviceable. Clair Obscur sees this and says, the combat is phenomenal. Firstly, the game has ranged attacks with which you can target weak points and also take down shields. You can shoot as much as you want in a single turn until you're exhausted with 0 action points, but then you won't have energy left for your other abilities. Deciding if that sacrifice is worth it is up to you. This already adds an interesting layer to fights, but even when following the recipe, Clair Obscur adds its own twist. As you can see, you don't just choose a move to do and then wait for the enemy's turn like transforming Power Rangers, which also came from Japan, so I'm seeing a pattern here. You need to time button inputs to get the most out of your moves, and in some cases to make them work at all.
Time to strike.
You can turn this off if you still hate broccolis, but it's not that demanding. More difficult and unturn-offable are dodging and parrying. When the enemy attacks you, you don't just stand there like,
hi, Mark.
You need to become
water, my friend.
Now you can be the more reliable and common cold water by dodging, which has relatively generous timings, or the clearly superior hot water by parrying like a Giga Chad, which if you do perfectly against all of an enemy's moves, you are rewarded with a brutal counter attack. Perfect dodge exists as well, which can have its own benefits, but you'll have to build your character accordingly. Then there are the rarer gradient parries, which are needed to counter special gradient attacks and have a lenient timing, and jump dodges, which have a visual indicator and also provide opportunities for counters. These remind me of some other game. I can't remember, Sex King Bro or something. Let's get it out of the way. The interactive elements feel very Sekiro-like, and I've seen some people dismiss that similarity.
You'll see some people make the comparison to Souls games. I think that is way overblown. This has nothing in common with Souls games.
But I'm sorry, Mr. Moist, your opinion is quite dry. It's your privilege speaking, the privilege of having played many Souls-like games. But I have played a few hours of Sekiro and I can just feel the inspiration in Clair Obscur. The enemies even have a posture bar that you can break, making them skip a turn. I can understand that Souls fans might be wary of that label being applied to Clair Obscur since the Dark Souls of X genre has been used more than mold in a French kitchen, but here it's apt, I think. This will be more clear when we get to the level design, but for now I want to talk about something better than the interactivity. The variety in this game is amazing, both in terms of enemies and party customization. The characters in a lot of JRPGs don't feel too different from each other mechanically. Even in Persona 3, my favorite JRPG, the difference between the party members is mainly what element they use, whether they have slashing, striking or piercing damage, what buffs they have, what fans do with them. In Clair Obscur, every party member has their own game plan. CL stacks Fortel on enemies and her damage output scales off of that. Attacks that add Fortel give her sun charges and attacks that consume Fortel give moon charges. These by themselves change the attributes of her abilities, but having both sun and moon charges makes her enter a twilight state which gives her these buffs. So she's all about getting to the Twilight Zone quickly and efficiently with as much Fortel on enemies as possible, which boosts her strongest attacks for massive damage. If you want,
It's your choice, really.
then you have Verso, who has a DMC style ranking. Whereas you attack, dodge and parry, a meter gradually fills up till you get to a higher rank. The lowest being
Fucking disgusting.
and the highest being
Some good fucking food.
but taking damage immediately drops your rank lower once per turn. His playstyle is all about mechanical prowess, so you can keep your aura high, which buffs his different abilities. If you want,
Your choice.
you even have the shape-shifting Monoko, who doesn't learn abilities and instead collects the legs of enemies, which lets him shape-shift into them. So you can use the bestiary of the game for your own purpose, like a game of Pokemon but with feet. But that is not all. The game has a fantastic augmentation system which lets us get even more creative with our characters. Players ask, how will you give us build variety? Clair Obscur answers, Pictos. Well, I pick CLs to use as an example. Firstly, Pictos are equipable charms that give you certain stats and more importantly, passives. Only 3 Pictos can be equipped at any time, but if you fight 4 battles with an equipped Picto, you master it and can use its passives without equipping the Picto. This consumes Lumina points which increase automatically upon leveling up or manually by using Lumina shards which can be found throughout the world. Now CL gets a weapon which makes every sun attack apply 10 foretell at once, but she takes double the damage. High risk, high reward. But I take this Picto that mitigates all damage by 50%, though she can be healed. I also give her an inverted affinity Picto, so heals damage her, but she does 50% more damage for 3 turns. 3 turns is just enough for me to reach Twilight, where I can unleash her most devastating attacks and tear through health bars. Pretty cool if I may say so myself, but imagine you have a pantry full of all the ingredients you could ever desire, but every single ingredient has better and worse versions. In your early days as a cook, you use Parmesan, and later you find mozzarella in the pantry, and from that point on the Parmesan becomes useless? No. CL's weapon I'm using, the Chation, I found it at the end of Act 1. It was level 7, and after upgrading it, I was still using it in the final act. Weapons in Clair Obscur aren't separated simply by stats or elemental effects. Finding a weapon with passives that give you an idea and synergizing it with Pictos to bring that idea to life and synergizing all of that with your other party members and it being scalable throughout the story, that is the magic of this game. Hats off to you, Sandfall. Huh? Where did Little Chef go? Oh, there he is. He appreciates you too. But all the customization in the world wouldn't be any fun if the enemies sucked. And I'm happy to tell you that they're not your mother. Give her my regards, as I give the enemies in Clair Obscur a 10 out of 10 because these are the best out of any JRPG I've played. And I've played a few. Forget JRPGs, these enemies are fantastic by any standards. Let me be clear though, I don't want to diss JRPGs because like I said I haven't played a lot and of the ones I played there have been awesome fights, but these usually came at the end of an area. The enemies I randomly encountered were mostly salad that I didn't care about before I got my steak. And unlike real meals, JRPGs have mostly salad. In Clair Obscur, my sock was working overtime every time I saw a new enemy.
What the flip?
Because whether they were bosses or grunts, they all had unique movesets and gimmicks which were always fun to learn. These sword-wielding great cultists put up shields at the expense of their actual life, like guys who say she's not yours, it's just your turn. Completely different from the ancient sanctuary automatons, who even after dying are like
Trying to fuck Megatron?
There are also stronger variants of normal enemies called chromatic, whatever their name is, which were some of my favorite fights as they put unique spins on the common enemies and were much stronger. Some of the spins are just give this enemy with shields a lot more shields, but others are like turn-based game. The game is also fairly well balanced. It would be very well balanced but for one area in Act 2 where I didn't even have to use any abilities, I just whipped out my gun like But besides this, the difficulty curve was as well done as a Hooters waitress. The movesets of the enemies kept getting harder to dodge or parry, but player options also kept increasing. And really, this is not porridge making. A JRPG is already difficult to balance since the player has the freedom to do side content at their own pace, but adding mechanical skills into the mix, it's really impressive that the game is paced so well. In the final act of the game, the world does open up and you can do all the side content before the trudge through the last area, making it trivial, but I didn't do that. not, and why would you want to do that? That's like eating a full plate of biryani before going to a fine dining restaurant. Yes, the biryani is delicious, but you're not going to be able to enjoy your restaurant food. Whereas if you finish fine dining first, you'll get the intended experience and still be hungry, so you can eat the biryani after. But rest assured, you're not going to be railroaded like in Final Fantasy XIII up to that point. There are lots of optional challenges in the earlier acts as well. From Persona's golden shadow-like enemies that run from you, to small platforming challenges, to large platforming challenges, to interesting side quests, you have plenty to find in the greater overworld as well as the smaller areas. It's just that the final act opens up everything. This decision is probably one of the reasons why the game is balanced so well, but there is one more piece to this puzzle. Dark Souls. Yes, I told you Dark Souls was on the menu, so get ready to eat. And yes, I'm using Sekiro and Dark Souls interchangeably. If you have a problem with that, you can take my apology. I'm sorry. The way you progress through each area in the game is heavily influenced by Souls games. Every area has flag posts that serve as bonfires where your game autosaves. You can rest, which will respawn all the enemies in the area, but also replenish your health and flasks. The flasks are the classic JRPG health, mana or AP and revive potions that you use in battle, and one flask that you can use outside of battle to replenish your entire party's health. You increase their power and uses by collecting shards throughout the world. So, since you can't stock up on these items and the world opens up slowly, the devs could probably estimate how strong the player's party would be at any given point before the last act, and like I said, they did a fantastic job. I should stress that the Souls similarities do not extend to difficulty. Clair Obscur is nowhere near as difficult as Souls games. There were maybe 3 or 4 bosses I got stuck on, and none of them were the main story bosses. The expedition flags are also placed very close to each other. And although there are a lot of diversions to go after, you're never gonna get lost in the sauce or stuck like a pig in a dire situation with no potions remaining. Dying also doesn't send you to the flag post, just to the last autosave, and you don't lose any currency when you die. We know that Italians and Chinese both use noodles, but spaghetti is not chow mein. Clair Obscur takes ingredients from Souls games, but the experience it wants to give you is very different. But although Clair Obscur is not as punishing as Souls games, it is just as fun. Of course, the ingredients can be fresh, they can be used brilliantly, but however delicious the food, you don't want it to come from the streets of India. What I'm trying to say is, Clair Obscur looks just as good as it plays, and I don't know what I can add to the visuals that aren't already on display. Well, let's talk about absence then. The lack of bugs. In my 36 hours of playtime, I experienced only one glitch, where I was able to climb through a bridge before I had actually unlocked the bridge, but I couldn't get to the other side, so it didn't even mess with my exploration. Besides this, there was not a single bug, not even a minor one like a hint of a shadow flickering, so I could enjoy the wonderful art direction of the game without any hitches. And that direction is super strong. Every time you go into a new area, it feels magical and wondrous. Because the game is fantasy in the vein of Alice in Wonderland more than Game of Thrones. Things don't make complete sense in the continent. People can just summon weapons and instruments out of thin air. Gravity can just say, SKA exists. There isn't a practical cohesion to the world, and this is not a negative. The visuals are instead geared towards getting across the themes and emotions of the story. And I can't really give an example because of spoilers, but you'll just have to trust me on that one. Now about the music. You must have already heard that Clair Obscur has a fantastic soundtrack. Clair Obscur has music that you're surely going to be bumping in your free time. At the very least, you'll be humming it. Although the tracks are very good in and of themselves, experiencing them in-game definitely elevates them, and you'll be clamoring to fit them into the grander story and the world's mysteries. There's not much else I can say. The music is there on YouTube if you want to check it out, but don't, because listening to it within the story will give you the true and complete experience. So moving on to the story, while that is what had the most impact on me, it's what I can talk about the least. I wouldn't want to spoil the story for anyone. The setup is that the people of Lumiere are trying to kill a godlike figure called the Paintress. Every year she paints a number on a faraway monolith, and after a year the people who are of the age that she painted die. Every year the number gets lower, so the people only have a limited time before they are completely wiped out. So every year they send out expeditions to try and stop her. You are part of the 33rd expedition, and everything the story sets up will pay off wonderfully. There are issues. Sometimes the writing style can get a bit too casual. This is reflected most in the humor, which for the most part is used well, but sometimes it can go from levity to diminishing the stakes of the story.
Oh, stop crying. You're not the one about to die. Damn it all, I should never have trusted a giant talking marshmallow. Great, and now I'm losing consciousness.
It also becomes very clear who the important characters are, and some of your party members don't get the fleshing out they need and deserve. The game's reliance on mystery and twists also makes some of the emotional moments not hit as hard as they should, because you have not connected all the dots yet, and their gravity only becomes apparent after you understand the bigger picture. And yet, the story is certainly art, and not art in the way games are art or literature is art or art is art. There are bad books, bad paintings, bad music. When I say Clair Obscur is art, I mean that it is great art. There are characters here that I think transcend the medium, and the whole journey is worth the end, and the end is worthy of the journey. I can't stress enough how small my complaints are, because I can't remember the last time I had this much of a consistently great experience. There was not a single moment where I felt like the game was getting tedious, not a single optional cutscene I wanted to miss, not a single area I wanted to run past. It's probably going to be my and many people's game of the year. Game of the decade? I don't know. There's some stiff competition, Baldur's Gate 3, Total War Warhammer 3, Elden Ring maybe. The community seems a bit divided on that one. But I'm certain Clair Obscur will stand the test of time, and might even bring more abstract storytelling into the mainstream, since most AAA games still rely on straightforward narratives. But that is a topic for another day. Let me know what games you would like me to cover. Maybe check out what I've already covered. Not every game can be a Clair Obscur, but they're all good videos, I think. Thank you, and bye-bye.
My, what lovely feet.